in man himself. It is the only way in which the entire universal program could be honestly administered. Religions in the West say that when man was created, God placed within man a spark of divine power, that God gave a part of himself into the creation of man. By this very concept itself, there is in the root of man a divine power, an omnipotence, an absoluteness, which is due to the very fact that the God in him is the life in him. And the fact that he is alive is a proof of the presence of the divine principle. In the Eastern philosophies, the presence of this divine principle is somewhat differently interpreted, but the fact remains that they also hold it to be inevitable, that within man is the solution to the mystery of himself. Within man is the means for the achievement of all that is necessary for the well-being of man, individual and collective. And this thing in man is the greatest value that man possesses. It is this thing which is truly his pearl of great price. It is this which is the treasure of his house. And it is this treasure which he is constantly seeking to understand, and with which he is desiring to establish a conscious rapport or relationship. Now, if this secret is locked within man, there are many legends and fables as to how it was lured out of its silent cavern. When the goddess Amaterasu or Mikami hid in a cave so that the light of the sun no longer shone upon the world, the other deities contrived a mirror and held it before the mouth of the cave, so that the goddess would look in the mirror and see what appeared to be another goddess more beautiful than herself. Because of the jealousy over this other goddess, Amaterasu came out of the cave, and light was restored to the world. This is an ancient fable from the Nihonji. But it has to do again with this light that is locked within man, and which must be lured forth out of man. And the thing that lures it forth is the reflection of itself. The thing that brings this life out of man is the very reflection of this life in the environment and around man. So that man, looking everywhere, sees merely himself, and from this position lures out of himself more and more of his own need to solve the mystery of himself. The legends are repeated in many parts of the world, but the stories are so familiar that most of you know many of these fairy tales and legends that deal with this theme. Actually, therefore, the bringing forth of value out of the individual is the luring of this other selfness out of the dark cavern. Now, there are many ways in which Zen and other doctrines have sought to accomplish most directly this procedure. But they all point out the very definite fact that all growth, even the luring of this value from within ourselves, must be subject to universal law. Law measures the means of things, the durations of things, and the rightness of things in time and under circumstances. Therefore, Zen, nor any other philosophy, can never break law, and can never cause that to occur which is not timely, or cannot bring about that which is not merited or deserved in the situation that exists. So Zen cannot say that there is some trick, or there is some secret formula, or there is some magical means by which man, unworthy of greater light, can receive it. Religion is not sorcery, neither is philosophy. Consequently, the achievement must be lawful. But the achievement can be lawful for the very simple reason that man's benightedness is the result of the operation of a law which causes man to reap as he sows, And if he continues to sow in darkness, he will reap in darkness. But Zen points out that this law is always subject to one thing, and that is that all of the thoughts, emotions, and actions of man are subject to the laws of existence. But the laws of existence themselves are subject to the infinite fact of consciousness. Therefore, consciousness never breaks a law. Consciousness is not greater than law. But consciousness is the means for the inevitable and eternal fulfillment of law. Consequently, if man, by a new statement of his own inner understanding of value, so states that he causes consciousness to move in terms of value, then man outgrows certain limitations, or ceases to keep the causes of his own tragedy moving or circling upon the wheel of destiny. Now, the answer to this consciousness problem to the Zen monk and to most Buddhist systems is the complete renunciation of false value, not by a long and arduous procedure, but by a process which Zen calls realization. And realization is the simple fact of man's intensive awakening to value. This is itself a psychological process, by the way, because the change has to occur in the psyche. That is the reason why no amount of mental attitude can work this miracle. No amount of affirmation can accomplish it. No amount of pretense or declaration can accomplish it. Because the only thing that can change man is that man changes himself. Now, we can claim anything we want to and remain the same. We can be engaged in the most learned discourse and be just as foolish as we ever were as far as circumstances within the psyche are concerned. If man, claiming much, experiences nothing of what he claims, then his psyche receives the experience of passing through this great claiming and no experience. It remains just as it is. Man inwardly is no more able to use certain declarations than man is outwardly able to use them. And Zen tells us that there is no change by claiming change. An individual does not become spiritual because he changes his creed. He does not become enlightened because he goes to a better church. He does not actually experience this psychic release because he devotes his entire life to reading noble books on great religions and philosophies. These things can never vitalize until they cause an experience of consciousness, a change in man himself. This is why the true person, the person who really believes, is supported by his belief, and why the person who does not really believe, though making great pretension, is not supported by his beliefs. It is only when this betterness becomes the fact of life, and not a theory held in the mind, that we have action. Consequently, devotion to a principle, no matter how noble this principle may be, has little effect if the individual who is dedicated to the principle is still the same selfish, egocentric person he was before. All of his pretenses, all of his statements have no value. The only thing that has value is the change in himself. So in Zen and in all these other mystical philosophies, everything depends upon the actual experience of direct acceptance of reality. This is value. This is the value that becomes so real that it is centered as fact in the subconscious. When a value is established clearly and firmly in the subconscious because it has received the total acceptance of the mental emotional complex, is moved into the psychic nature as a fact, sustained by the continual repetition of the performance of that principle. When this is achieved, then the individual, when he relaxes, when he is under tension, whenever it becomes necessary for him to call upon internal support, all this individual has to do is relax. Because immediately the fact which he has set up in himself moves out and gives him the strength that he needs for the circumstances that confront him. But unless this fact is established by intent, unless this fact has automatically taken precedence over the numerous non-factual attitudes, if this fact is not clear enough or strong enough to make a deep impression upon the subconscious, then nothing has been achieved. A person, by a series of negative attitudes over 40 or 50 years, by the constant statement of things which are not true, can develop a psychosis. He cuts a deep rut in his own psychic nature, and this becomes the basis of a series of powerful negative situations. The Buddhist says that by continually, over a period of time, reaffirming as fact, experiencing as fact, accepting whole-soully and living accordingly, a concept of value can be impressed upon the subconscious until this value pattern becomes automatic and subjectively solid. From that time on, this value is available. From that time on, the individual will instinctively live, act, and think in accordance with that value. And if this value is true, if he has built a real foundation of concept, of principles and law within himself, in any emergency that arises, he is sufficient to his own need. But unless the intensity of his own original attitude has cut this deep and clear mark, then it is not available to him. So in emergencies, the person who has had nice thoughts but never really done anything about them does not have strength. But the person who has convictions and has built them quietly and firmly over a period of time finds these convictions suddenly come out again through himself in the form of his spiritual help in time of trouble. So whatever he has put in there will come out. Also, it is more than just simply this, because if what he puts in is true, then it finally identifies itself with this subjective record of truth, which man does contain, and gradually helps him to build the total power of the internal over the external. And the more he builds of this internal fact, the more available the eternal fact becomes. So gradually he builds bridges between his personality and the great psychic strength which is within himself. And as this unfolds, he becomes increasingly aware of the Buddha power in himself, until finally, in the concept of the Western paradise, man suddenly beholds inwardly the entire radiance of Amitabha. And this radiance is his own eternal nature. It is the fact that he has suddenly transformed his world into a paradisical sphere. He has redeemed the situation of his own life. He has discovered value and allowed value to become the true and absolute ruler of destiny. In so doing, he has created his own paradise. And the collective body of mankind, by the same procedure, finally creates the perfect civilization, the ultimate world in which truth rules and all men live together in peace. This is the search and the solution to the essential principle of value. And so we'll have to discontinue now and continue next week again, and we thank you all for being here. Thank you very much.